She was sleeping under a bridge in December, her teaching certificate and a trash bag of clothes her only possessions. Then a little girl's voice pierced the freezing morning. "Daddy, why is that lady sleeping in the cold?" The man who came to investigate was Dominic Marchetti, Chicago's most powerful mafia boss, and his 6-year-old daughter had just changed 3 lives forever. The morning air bit like broken glass. Grace Holloway woke to the sensation she'd come to dread most, the bone-deep cold that meant she'd survived another night. She opened her eyes slowly, her body protesting every movement. Above her, the underside of the Lake Street Bridge stretched like a concrete sky, graffiti and rust patterns her only ceiling. 5:43 a.m. She knew without checking a watch she no longer owned. Her body had become a clock, trained by months of survival to wake before the morning joggers started their routes, before the police patrols increased, before witnesses could see where she'd spent the night. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Grace sat up carefully, her spine crackling like kindling. She was 32 years old and felt 60. The trash bag containing everything she owned sat beside her, and she reached inside with numb fingers, pulling out the plastic folder she'd protected through everything. Inside was her teaching certificate from the University of Illinois, bachelor's degree in elementary education, graduated with honors, current employment status, homeless. She'd been an exceptional teacher once. 2nd grade at Riverside Elementary. The kind of teacher who stayed late to help struggling readers, who bought supplies with her own money, who learned her students' stories and treated them like they mattered. Then she'd made the mistake of falling in love with Ryan Holloway, a man whose charm masked cruelty, whose love transformed into control, whose hands became weapons. The restraining order had been filed 3 months ago. Ryan had violated it twice before disappearing, taking their joint bank account, her car, and any sense of safety she had left. The school system, afraid of the drama bleeding into their classrooms, had quietly suggested she resign. "Just until things settle down," the principal had said, not meeting her eyes. She'd understood the subtext. "We don't want your problems here." Now Grace lived under bridges and in doorways, carrying her teaching certificate like a talisman, proof that she'd been someone once. Evidence that this wasn't permanent, couldn't be permanent. She folded the certificate carefully back into its folder and checked her other possessions. 1 change of clothes, a toiletry bag with travel-sized items stolen from a gas station, a water bottle, 3 granola bars, and a book, the only luxury she allowed herself, a battered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the novel she'd taught every year, the one about justice and compassion and courage. The temperature read 28 degrees. Grace pulled her thin jacket tighter. She'd lost her winter coat 2 weeks ago when someone stole her previous bag while she slept and prepared to move. Rule number 1 of being homeless: never stay in the same place twice. Patterns attracted attention, and attention attracted danger. She stood, her joints screaming, and gathered her things. The river path would be active soon. She needed to find somewhere to wash up before the library opened at 9. The bathroom there had become her sanctuary, the only place she could feel almost human again. Grace started walking along the underpass when she heard its footsteps. Multiple sets, moving fast. Her heart rate spiked. She'd developed predator awareness, the ability to distinguish between harmless passers-by and people who meant harm. These footsteps meant harm. "There she is." The voice came from behind. Grace turned. 3 men in hoodies blocked her exit from the underpass. She recognized the one in front, Tommy Reeves, Ryan's cousin, the one who'd helped Ryan clear out their apartment, who'd laughed when she'd begged them to leave her laptop. Grace Holloway. Tommy's smile was all teeth and malice. "Ryan's been looking for you." Her stomach dropped. The restraining order. "Yeah, Ryan mentioned that. Seemed real torn up about it." Tommy stepped closer. "See, the problem is, you testified against him. Got him fired from his job. He thinks you owe him something." Grace's fingers tightened around her trash bag. Her eyes scanned for exits. The underpass had 2 openings. The men blocked one, and the other led to the river's edge, a dead end. "I don't owe him anything," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Tell Ryan the next time he violates the order, I'm pressing charges." Tommy laughed. "Press charges? Look at you. You think any cop is going to take a homeless woman seriously?" He gestured to his friends. "Get her phone. Get whatever money she has. Ryan wants her to know what it feels like to lose everything." The men moved forward. Grace ran. She bolted toward the river opening, knowing it was stupid, knowing she was trapped. But movement was better than paralysis. Her feet pounded against concrete. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and behind her, she heard them laughing, enjoying the chase. She burst out from under the bridge into weak morning sunlight. The Chicago River stretched before her, gray and unforgiving. A walking path ran along its edge, empty except for a black Range Rover sat parked 30 feet away, engine idling, and standing beside it was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 6 or 7. Dark curly hair spilled from beneath a pink knit hat. She wore a puffy purple coat and held what looked like a juice box. But what stopped Grace's heart was the expression on the child's face, pure concern, as she looked directly at Grace. "Daddy!" the girl called out, her voice high and urgent. "Daddy, come quick! That lady needs help." The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested both gym time and real-world violence. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, olive skin. He wore dark jeans, a black wool coat that probably cost thousands, and an expression of casual authority that said he was used to being obeyed without question. His eyes swept the scene in one efficient glance. Grace, disheveled and terrified. The 3 men emerging from the underpass behind her. The situation crystallized in an instant. "Daddy, why is that lady sleeping in the cold?" the little girl asked, pointing at Grace's trash bag. "She doesn't have a home. Look at her things." The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. He stepped between Grace and the approaching men with the kind of casual confidence that stopped them in their tracks. "Morning, gentlemen." His voice was deep, smooth, and absolutely devoid of warmth. "Beautiful day for a walk by the river." Tommy had frozen, his eyes widening with recognition. "Mr. Marchetti, we weren't." "You weren't what?" The man Marchetti tilted his head slightly. "You weren't chasing a woman half your size? You weren't planning to rob someone who clearly has nothing worth taking?" He took a single step forward. "Or were you not expecting witnesses?" Grace's mind raced. Marchetti. She knew that name. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. Dominic Marchetti ran half the city's underground, owned restaurants and clubs and buildings, wielded power that made politicians nervous. "It's a misunderstanding," Tommy stammered. We just wanted to talk." "I don't think she wanted to talk." Marchetti's tone remained conversational, but his eyes had gone cold. "In fact, I think she was running, which means you and were hunting." He pulled out his phone with one hand, never taking his eyes off the 3 men. He pressed a single button. "Marcus, Lake Street Bridge, East Path. 3 problems need addressing." He paused. "No, not that kind of addressing. Just identification and education." He ended the call and returned the phone to his pocket. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand exactly where you are until my associate arrives. Then you're going to explain to him exactly why you thought this was acceptable behavior. And then," his voice dropped lower, each word weighted with threat, "you're never going to come near this woman again. Clear?" Tommy nodded frantically. His companions looked ready to bolt, but something about Marchetti's stillness kept them rooted. Grace stood frozen, her heart hammering. She should run. She should disappear before getting caught up in whatever world this man inhabited. But her legs wouldn't move, and the little girl was still watching her with those concerned brown eyes. "Miss." Marchetti turned to face her fully. "Are you hurt?" Grace shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Good." He glanced at her trash bag, at her thin jacket, at the way she was shivering despite the adrenaline. "My daughter noticed you've been sleeping rough. Is that accurate?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. She nodded. "How long?" 3 months, she whispered. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And these men?" "My ex-husband's cousin. They've been. Ryan has been looking for me." "Your ex-husband." Marchetti's tone made it clear he understood exactly what that meant. "And the restraining order? How did you—" "I didn't, but I've seen enough to know the pattern." He checked his watch, then looked back at the 3 men, who hadn't moved an inch. A black Mercedes had pulled up, and a man built like a linebacker was climbing out. "Marcus," Marchetti said. "These gentlemen were just explaining why they thought pursuing Miss—" He paused, looking at Grace. "What's your name?" "Grace. Grace Holloway." "Miss Holloway." They were explaining their reasoning. "I'd like a full report. Names, addresses, employment, known associates. And find out everything about a Ryan Holloway. Restraining order violation. I'm guessing multiple counts." Marcus nodded. his expression promising that the three men's day was about to get significantly worse. Marchetti turned his attention back to Grace, and his expression softened fractionally. "Miss Holloway, my daughter has raised a valid concern. You're sleeping outside in December. That's going to kill you. I'm managing, Daddy." The little girl interrupted, walking over to stand beside her father. She looked up at Grace with heartbreaking sincerity. "Are you hungry? We have extra breakfast." "Maria always packs too much." Grace's eyes burned. She blinked hard. "That's very kind, but..." "It's not kind," Marchetti said. "It's basic human decency. Something apparently lacking in this city." He studied her for a long moment. "You're educated. I can hear it in your speech. And you're carrying a book, which means you're not just surviving, you're trying to maintain some kind of mental engagement. What did you do before?" "I was a teacher." Something flickered across his face. "A teacher. 2nd grade. Riverside Elementary." "Daddy, that's my school," the little girl exclaimed. "Well, I'm in 1st grade, but still." Marchetti looked down at his daughter, then back at Grace. She watched him make a decision, saw it happen in the subtle shift of his expression. "Miss Holloway, I'm going to make you an offer. You can refuse it without consequence, but I'd like you to hear me out." He gestured to the Range Rover. "My name is Dominic Marchetti. This is my daughter, Sofia. We're heading home for breakfast. I'd like you to join us. Get warm, get fed, and we can discuss some options for your situation." "Options?" Grace's voice came out hoarse. "Housing, employment, protection from men who think hunting women is acceptable recreation." His tone was matter of fact. "You're not going to spend another night under that bridge. Not if I can prevent it." Grace looked at this man, this dangerous, powerful man, and at his daughter, who was smiling hopefully. Every instinct screamed that this was trading one danger for another. But those same instincts had failed her before. They'd led her to Ryan, after all. And right now, this little girl with her juice box and genuine concern represented something Grace thought she'd lost. Simple human kindness. "Just breakfast?" Grace asked carefully. "Just breakfast," Dominic confirmed. "And a conversation. No obligations beyond that. You can walk away whenever you want." He extended his hand not to grab her, but palm up, offering a choice, not a command. Grace looked at his hand, at Sofia's hopeful face, at the trash bag containing her entire life. She took his hand. His grip was warm and solid, anchoring her to this surreal moment. He guided her toward the Range Rover, while Marcus dealt with Tommy and his friends. Sofia skipped ahead, chattering about how Maria made the best pancakes in Chicago, and how their house had 17 rooms, but she could only sleep in one, which seemed silly. Dominic opened the rear passenger door and waited while Grace climbed in. The interior was warm, leather seats heated, and the contrast to the freezing bridge nearly made her cry. Sofia climbed in beside her, immediately offering a blanket from the back. "Here, Daddy keeps these for emergencies." "You're an emergency, right, Daddy?" "Right, Princess." Dominic met Grace's eyes in the rearview mirror as he started the engine. "Let's get you somewhere warm." As they pulled away from the river, Grace watched the bridge disappear behind them, the place where she'd spent last night, where she'd almost been hurt, where everything had changed because a little girl had asked one simple question. "Why is that lady sleeping in the cold?" Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Grace didn't know what came next. Didn't know if she could trust this man, this world she was entering. But she was warm for the first time in weeks, and Sofia was showing her pictures on a tablet of their golden retriever named Biscuit, and for this moment, that was enough. The city passed by outside the window familiar Chicago streets that had become foreign territory when she'd lost everything. Grace pressed her hand against the warm glass and allowed herself a dangerous thought. Maybe this is how you survive, not by refusing help, but by accepting it when it comes from unexpected places. Even if those places happen to be the passenger seat of a Mafia boss's Range Rover. The drive took 20 minutes through Chicago's north side, moving from the industrial riverfront into neighborhoods where trees lined streets and houses became estates. Grace watched the transition through the window, her teacher's mind automatically categorizing socioeconomic markers. They'd left her world behind miles ago. Sofia kept up a steady stream of conversation, oblivious to Grace's nerves. "Do you like dogs? Biscuit is the best dog ever. He's really fluffy and sometimes he steals socks. Last week he took Daddy's fancy sock, the one with little horses, and buried it in the garden." Maria was so mad. "Sofia, Dominic said mildly. Let Miss Holloway breathe. It's okay, Grace found herself saying. I love dogs. And I'd definitely like to meet a dog who steals fancy socks. Sofia beamed. See, Daddy? She likes dogs. That means she's nice. Mean people don't like dogs. That's not exactly scientific reasoning, Princess. Grandma Rosa says it, and she's always right. Dominic's lips quirked, almost smiling. Can't argue with Grandma Rosa. They turned onto a private drive, the gates opening, automatically. Grace's stomach tightened. The property beyond could only be described as an estate, a 3-story Italian-style villa in cream stone, with manicured grounds, a circular driveway with a fountain, and what looked like a separate guest house. This wasn't just wealth. This was power made visible. The Range Rover stopped near the main entrance. Dominic stepped out and opened Sofia's door first, then Grace's. She climbed out slowly, clutching her trash bag like a shield. Miss Holloway. He noticed her death grip on her possessions. No one will touch your things. You have my word. A woman appeared in the doorway, late 50s. Silver hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing an apron over practical clothes. Her face was kind but assessing, taking in Grace's appearance with one comprehensive glance. Maria, Dominic said, this is Miss Grace Holloway. She'll be joining us for breakfast. Could you prepare the guest room in the East Wing? She'll need fresh clothes, toiletries, whatever she requires. Maria's expression shifted to understanding. Of course, Mr. Marchetti. Miss Holloway, welcome. Please come inside where it's warm. Sofia grabbed Grace's free hand. Come on, I'll show you everything. We have a library, and Daddy says libraries are important because books hold all the world's secrets. And, Sofia, Dominic interrupted gently. Show Miss Holloway to the living room first. Let her sit down, warm up. Books can wait. The interior of the house matched the exterior's elegant marble floors, artwork that looked original and expensive, furniture that managed to be both luxurious and livable. But what struck Grace most was the warmth. Not just physical heat, though that was abundant, but something else. Family photos on side tables. Sofia's drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets. A dog bed by the fireplace where a golden retriever was currently sprawling. Biscuit. Sofia released Grace's hand and ran to the dog. Biscuit, we have a guest. Be nice! The dog lifted his head, gave a gentle woof, and went back to sleep. Grace stood in the entrance, feeling desperately out of place. Her jacket was stained, her jeans torn at one knee, her hair unwashed for days. She could smell herself the particular funk of someone who'd been sleeping rough. And here she was, standing in a house that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Miss Holloway. Dominic was watching her. The guest bathroom is through that door. If you'd like to wash up before breakfast, please do. Take your time. Maria's preparing the upstairs room, but that one's available now. It was an offering of dignity. Grace felt something crack in her chest. Thank you, she whispered. She walked to the bathroom on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Inside, she locked the door and stood in the gleaming space, all white marble and chrome fixtures, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back was a stranger. Hollow-eyed, gaunt, hair tangled and dull. Grace turned away from the mirror and turned on the faucet, letting hot water run over her cracked hands. It hurt at first, then felt like mercy. She washed her face, her neck, her hands, used the expensive soap that smelled like lavender, tried to finger comb her hair into something presentable. It was inadequate, she knew, but it was something. A small reclaiming of humanity. When she emerged 15 minutes later, voices came from what she assumed was the dining room. She followed them. The room was bright with morning sun streaming through tall windows. A long table held enough food for a dozen people. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, pastries. Maria was setting out juice. Sofia sat at one end, swinging her legs, and Dominic stood by the window, phone to his ear, his voice low and controlled. I don't care what excuse he has. I want him in my office by noon. He paused. No, Marcus, not a request. Tell him the consequences of saying no, then let him make his choice. He ended the call and turned, noticing Grace in the doorway. His expression softened fractionally. Please, sit, eat whatever you'd like. Grace sat carefully in the chair Maria gestured to, trying not to look too eager as food was placed in front of her. Her stomach growled audibly. Sofia giggled. It's okay to be hungry, the little girl said seriously. Daddy says being hungry isn't shameful. Only wasting food is shameful. Your daddy's right, Grace said. She started eating slowly, forcing herself not to rush despite the desperate hunger clawing at her. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy, buttered, warm. She focused on that, on the simple act of eating, trying not to cry. Dominic sat across from her, drinking coffee, saying nothing, just giving her space to eat in peace. It was Sofia who kept the conversation going, chattering about school, about her friend Emma who had the same backpack, about how math was hard but reading was easy. "I love reading," Sofia announced. "Miss Peterson says I'm at a 3rd grade level, but I'm only in 1st grade. Do you like reading, Miss Grace?" "I do," Grace said. "I was a reading teacher." "Really?" Sofia's eyes went huge. "Did you teach little kids like me?" "A bit older. 2nd graders. But yes, kids like you." "Daddy, she's a reading teacher. That's perfect." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Perfect for what, princess?" "For me. For helping me. You're always saying how I need extra enrichment because I'm advanced, and Miss Grace needs a job." So, Sofia looked between them, her logic apparently irrefutable. Grace felt her cheeks heat. "Sofia, that's very sweet, but..." "Actually," Dominic interrupted, his tone thoughtful, "that's not a terrible idea." Grace's head snapped up. "I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Sofia does need additional academic support. Her school recommends it. And you need employment and housing. Those are facts, not judgments." "Mr. Marchetti, Dominic, please, Dominic." The name felt too familiar on her tongue. "You don't know anything about me. For all you know, I could be..." "You could be exactly what you claim? A teacher who fell on hard times?" He pulled out his phone and tapped something. "Grace Elizabeth Holloway, bachelor's degree from University of Illinois, graduated 2010 with honors, taught at Riverside Elementary for 6 years, received a Teacher of Excellence Award in 2022. He looked up. "Your principal wrote that you had an extraordinary gift for connecting with struggling readers, that you saw potential in students others had given up on. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." Grace's throat closed. "How did you..." "I make it my business to know who enters my home, especially around my daughter." His expression remained neutral. "I also know about Ryan Holloway. Domestic violence arrests, though charges were dropped. Restraining order filed 3 months ago. 2 documented violations. You resigned from your position in September, citing personal circumstances." Shame burned through her. He knew everything, saw all her failures laid bare. "I'm not telling you this to embarrass you," Dominic continued, his voice gentler. "I'm telling you so you understand that I make informed decisions. And right now, I'm deciding that you're not a threat to my daughter, that your credentials are legitimate, and that Sofia's impulsive suggestion actually solves multiple problems." "I don't need charity," Grace said, hating how her voice shook. "It's not charity. It's employment. Sofia needs a tutor. You need work. You'll earn your pay." He named a monthly salary that made Grace's vision blur. It was more than she'd made teaching full-time. "That's too much. That's what the position is worth. Take it or negotiate higher, but don't insult either of us by suggesting you're not worth fair compensation." He stood, carrying his coffee cup to the window. "The guest house is empty. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, completely private. It's yours for as long as you're employed here. No rent." Grace stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the grounds. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Sofia was 3. He turned to face her. The last year of Sofia's life, she was frail. We had nursing care, medical equipment, a hospital bed in our bedroom, and every morning, without fail, Sofia would bring her mother 1 flower from the garden. Wouldn't matter if it was a dandelion or a rose. She'd bring it, put it in a cup, and tell her mother it was beautiful." He paused, and Grace saw the grief flicker across his face. "Sofia used to say that children see the world as it should be, not as it is. That they notice what adults have trained themselves to ignore." He looked at his daughter, who was making a pancake tower. "This morning, Sofia saw a woman in need and asked why no one was helping. She saw you, Miss Holloway, when everyone else would have looked away. That kind of compassion isn't something I want to discourage." Grace's eyes burned. "So this is for Sofia? To teach her a lesson about helping people?" "No," Dominic said quietly. "This is for you. Because you shouldn't have been sleeping under that bridge. Because those men shouldn't have been hunting you. Because the system that's supposed to protect people like you failed catastrophically. His jaw tightened. And because I have the resources to do something about it. Simple as that. It wasn't simple. Nothing about this was simple. But Grace was exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually exhausted. And this man was offering her a life raft when she'd been drowning for months. I'll need to think about it, she heard herself say. Of course. Take your time. Dominic checked his watch. Maria has prepared the guest room upstairs. Shower, rest, wear clothes that actually fit. We'll talk more this afternoon when you've had a chance to process. No pressure, no obligations beyond breakfast, as promised. Maria appeared in the doorway. The room is ready, Miss Holloway. If you'll follow me? Grace stood, clutching her trash bag, and followed Maria through the house and up a curved staircase. The guest room was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Ryan. A king-sized bed with a thick duvet, windows overlooking the garden, a bathroom with a soaking tub, and laid out on the bed, new clothes, jeans, sweaters, underwear, all in what looked like her size. I estimated, Maria said kindly. If anything doesn't fit, just let me know. There are toiletries in the bathroom, and I've put fresh towels on the warming rack. She paused at the door. Mr. Marchetti is a good man, Miss Holloway. I know his reputation, know what people say, but he has a good heart, especially when it comes to protecting those who can't protect themselves. Whatever you decide, know that you're safe here. Then she was gone, leaving Grace alone in this beautiful room that felt like a dream. Grace set down her trash bag and walked to the window. The ground stretched out below gardens, trees, a glimpse of what might be a pool. Normal, wealthy, safe. She thought about the bridge, about Tommy and his friends, about 3 months of fear and hunger and cold, about her teaching certificate folded in plastic, her only proof of who she'd been. Then she thought about Sofia's question, why is that lady sleeping in the cold? And Dominic's answer, because I have the resources to do something about it. Grace turned away from the window and walked to the bathroom. She started the shower, watching steam fill the space. Then, for the first time in 3 months, she undressed completely, stepped into hot water, and let herself cry. She cried for everything she'd lost, for the woman she'd been, for the terror of the past months, for the kindness of a 6-year-old girl, for the unexpected mercy of a dangerous man. And when she finally stopped crying, she washed herself clean, dried off with towels so soft they felt like luxury, and dressed in clothes that fit, that were clean, that were hers. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw something she hadn't seen in months, a person. Not a victim, not a statistic, not a homeless woman under a bridge, a person. Grace walked to the bed and lay down on top of the duvet, just for a moment, just to feel what it was like to rest somewhere soft and warm and safe. She fell asleep in seconds, her body surrendering to exhaustion, and didn't wake for 6 hours. When Grace woke, the room was dim with afternoon light. She sat up, disoriented, her heart racing with the panic that had become reflexive. Where was she? Was she safe? What memory flooded back? The bridge, the men, Dominic Marchetti, Sofia, the offer. Grace stood and walked to the window. Below, she could see Sofia playing in the garden with Biscuit, her laughter carrying faintly through the glass. Dominic stood nearby, watching his daughter, phone to his ear but attention clearly divided. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the distance. He said something into his phone, ended the call, and gestured toward the house. An invitation? A question? Grace nodded, though she wasn't sure what she was agreeing to. She made her way downstairs, following the sound of Sofia's voice. The back door led to a stone patio where Maria was setting out afternoon tea because apparently that was a thing in this house. Miss Grace. Sofia spotted her immediately and came running. You're awake. Did you sleep good? Daddy said you needed rest because you've been very tired. Are you still tired? Do you want to play with Biscuit? He knows tricks. Sofia, Dominic said, walking over. Give Miss Holloway a chance to wake and up properly. Sorry, Sofia said, not looking sorry at all. But are you staying? Are you going to be my tutor? Please say yes. I promise I'll be a good student. I'll read all the books and do all the work and… Sofia. Dominic's tone was gentle but firm. We talked about this. Miss Holloway needs to make her own decision. He looked at Grace, and his expression was carefully neutral. Did you have enough rest? Yes. Thank you. Grace wrapped her arms around herself. I need to ask you something. Of course. Why me? Really? You could help anyone. Could hire any tutor. Why invest in a homeless woman you found under a bridge? Dominic was quiet for a moment, watching his daughter chase the dog. Can I show you something? He led her into the house, through corridors Grace hadn't seen, to what appeared to be a study. Dark wood, leather furniture, bookshelves lining the walls. But it was the desk he approached, picking up a framed photograph. This is Sofia, he said, handing it to Grace. The woman in the photo was beautiful dark hair, warm smile, holding a toddler Sofia. But what struck Grace was the caption beneath. Sofia Marchetti, director of Chicago Women's Shelter, receives Community Service Award. She devoted her life to helping women in crisis, Dominic said quietly. Domestic violence survivors, women fleeing trafficking, anyone who needed a safe place. She built the shelter from nothing, funded it herself, fought tooth and nail for every woman who came through those doors. He took the photo back, studying his wife's face. When she got sick, she made me promise something. She said, "The world has enough men who look away. Be the one who doesn't." So that's what I do, Miss Holloway. I don't look away. Grace felt tears threaten again. I don't know if I can do this. Accept this much help. Then don't think of it as help. Think of it as employment. You'll work for every dollar you earn. Sofia needs structure, challenge, someone who can nurture on her gift without pushing too hard. You need safety and purpose. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. And if I fail, if I'm not good enough, Dominic met her eyes directly, then we'll figure it out together. But I've read your evaluations, Miss Holloway. I don't think failure is your problem. I think you've been told you failed when actually the system failed you. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The men this morning, Tommy and his friends, they won't bother you again. Marcus had a conversation with them. They understand that you're under my protection now, and the consequences of ignoring that would be severe. Protection, Grace repeated. What does that mean exactly? It means you're safe. Here, anywhere in the city, anywhere my influence reaches. He turned to face her. I know what you're thinking. That accepting my help means entering a world you don't understand, dealing with things you'd rather not know about. You're right. My business has aspects I don't discuss with civilians, but the offer stands regardless. You don't have to understand my world to benefit from it. Grace thought about Ryan, about control masquerading as care. This isn't about control, is it? You're not going to... No. His voice was firm. This is about providing safety and opportunity, not replacing one form of control with another. You'll have your own space in the guest house, your own key, your own life. I'm offering employment and protection, Miss Holloway, not ownership. She believed him. Maybe that made her naive, but she believed him. Okay, Grace said. I'll try it. A trial period. 1 month. If it's not working for either of us, I'll leave. No hard feelings. Something that might have been relief crossed Dominic's face. 1 month. Fair enough. You'll start Monday. Sofia's schedule, curriculum requirements, everything you need, Maria will help you get organized. The guest house is ready whenever you want to move in. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he was offering. I don't know how I'll ever repay this. Be good to my daughter. That's payment enough. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Miss Holloway. Grace shook his hand, and for the first time in months, felt like maybe, just maybe she was going to survive this. She had no idea that accepting this offer would pull her into Dominic Marchetti's dangerous world, that old threats would emerge with new vengeance, or that the man offering her safety would become the person she couldn't imagine living without. All she knew was that she was warm, she was safe, and a little girl with a huge heart had asked the right question at exactly the right moment. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. 3 weeks later, Grace sat cross-legged on the floor of Sofia's playroom, surrounded by books and flashcards, watching her student sound out a particularly difficult word. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching the dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. Perseverance, Sofia said triumphantly, looking up with pride. Perfect, Grace said, smiling. And what does it mean? It means not giving up even when things are really hard. Sofia's face became serious. Like you, Miss Grace. You persevered when you didn't have a home. Grace's chest tightened. Over the past 3 weeks, Sofia had become more than a student. She was insightful, compassionate, funny, and occasionally too observant for comfort. That's exactly right. Now, can you use it in a sentence? My daddy says that perseverance is the most important quality a person can have, because life is hard but giving up makes it harder. Your daddy's a smart man. He's the smartest, Sofia said with absolute certainty. And he likes you, I can tell. Grace felt heat creep into her cheeks. Sofia, he smiles more when you're around. Not the fake smile he uses with business people, the real one. Like he used to smile at mommy and the business people. Pictures. Sofia tilted her head, studying Grace with those two wise eyes. Do you like him? This was dangerous territory. Your father has been very kind to me. I'm grateful. That's not what I asked. Grace sighed. The truth was, she did like Dominic. More than was probably wise. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd seen glimpses of the man beneath the armor. The way he was patient with Sofia's endless questions. The gentle way he handled Biscuit. The rare moments when his guard dropped and she saw genuine warmth in his eyes. But she'd also seen the other side. The phone calls conducted in Italian, his tone sharp and commanding. The men who came to the house for meetings, their deference making it clear exactly who Dominic Marchetti was in Chicago's hierarchy. The nights when he came home late, his knuckles bruised, his expression carefully blank. He was dangerous, she knew that. But he'd never once made her feel unsafe. Your father and I are friends, Grace said carefully. He's my employer, and I respect him very much. But that's all, sweetie. Sofia looked unconvinced but mercifully dropped the subject. Can we read now? I want to finish the chapter about Matilda's powers. They spent the next hour lost in Roald Dahl's world. Sofia's reading fluent and engaged, her comprehension questions insightful. Grace made notes for Monday's lesson plan, marveling at how quickly she'd fallen back into teaching rhythms. This felt right, natural, like coming home to herself. At 5 o'clock, Maria appeared in the doorway. Miss Sofia, time to wash up for dinner. Your father will be home soon. Sofia groaned dramatically but gathered her books. Will you eat with us, Miss Grace? Please? Daddy says you can eat with us whenever you want, but you always go back to the guest house. I don't want to intrude on your family time. You're not intruding. You're family now. Right, Maria? Maria smiled warmly. Mr. Marchetti did mention he'd appreciate your company at dinner. Miss Holloway, he has something he'd like to discuss with you. Something in Maria's tone made Grace's stomach flutter with nervousness. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, but perhaps it's best if he explains. An hour later, Grace sat at the dining table wearing one of the nicer outfits Maria had provided, a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. She'd learned that Dominic preferred casual dinners with Sofia, despite the formal dining room. Family time, he called it, was sacred. He arrived at 6, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loosened. He looked tired but smiled when he saw Sofia. There's my girl. How was your day? Sofia launched into a detailed recounting of their reading session, her vocabulary lesson, and her theory about why Matilda's powers were actually about believing in yourself. Dominic listened with full attention, asking questions, praising her insights. Grace watched the interaction, something warm unfurling in her chest. This was the Dominic most people never saw, the devoted father, the man who'd put aside running an empire to hear about his daughter's day. When Sofia finally paused for breath, Dominic glanced at Grace. And how's my daughter as a student? Honestly? She's exceptional, Grace said. Her reading comprehension is at a 4th grade level, maybe higher. Her vocabulary retention is extraordinary. And her emotional intelligence, she shook her head in wonder. I've taught hundreds of students. Sofia's in the top 5% across the board. Sofia beamed. Dominic's expression softened with pride. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing her, for challenging her, for making this house feel like a home again. The weight of his words hung in the air. Maria served dinner chicken piccata, Sofia's favorite, and conversation flowed easily. But Grace noticed Dominic watching her throughout the meal, something unreadable in his expression. After dinner, Sofia was dispatched with Maria for bath and bedtime routine. Dominic gestured for Grace to follow him to the study. The room was dimly lit, just a desk lamp and the glow from the fireplace. Dominic poured 2 glasses of wine without asking, handed one to Grace, and sat in the leather chair across from her. 3 weeks, he said. How are you settling in? Good, really good. Grace took a sip of wine. The guest house is perfect. Sofia's a dream to work with. I feel like I'm finally getting back to who I was before. She stopped. Before Ryan, Dominic finished. You can say his name. He doesn't have power here. Grace nodded. I keep expecting something to go wrong. For this to be too good to be true. It's not. But I need to talk to you about something. Dominic's expression grew serious. Marcus ran a comprehensive check on Ryan Holloway. What he found is concerning. Grace's hand tightened on her wine glass. What did he find? Ryan's been looking for you. Actively. He's hired a private investigator. Put out word on the street that he's offering money for information on your whereabouts. Dominic leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He's also violated the restraining order 7 times in the past 3 months. The police haven't acted because he's careful, drives by your old apartment, shows up at places you used to frequent, but never makes direct contact with you. Grace's stomach dropped. He's escalating. Yes, and there's more. Ryan has a criminal record that didn't show up in standard searches. Sealed juvenile file. But Marcus has connections. Assault charges at 16. Domestic violence with a previous girlfriend at 19, she dropped charges. And he's connected to some people I know. Not good people. Connected how? Dominic's jaw tightened. He's been doing some low-level work for a man named Vincent Calabrese. Debt collection, intimidation, occasional muscle work. Vincent operates on the edges of my territory. We have an understanding he doesn't cross certain lines. I don't shut him down. But he's unpredictable, ambitious, and if Ryan's working for him, if Vincent learns that you're here, he could use me to get to you. Grace finished, her voice hollow. Exactly. Dominic stood, pacing to the window. I wanted to tell you because you deserve to know what you're walking into. Being under my protection means being visible to people who might want to use that against me. Grace set down her wineglass with shaking hands. Are you saying I should leave? No. He turned to face her, his expression fierce. I'm saying the opposite. You're safer here than anywhere else in this city. But you need to understand the reality. No more walking alone. No leaving the property without Marcus or another guard. No contact with anyone from your old life without clearing it with me first. The rules felt like chains, even though Grace understood their necessity. This is what your world looks like. Yes, and I'm sorry for that, but I won't apologize for keeping you safe. He moved closer, and Grace could see the intensity in his dark eyes. You've become important to Sofia, to this house, to... He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. I won't let Ryan or anyone else hurt you. That's a promise. Grace stood, needing to move, to process. What aren't you telling me? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Vincent Calabrese has been testing boundaries lately. Small things operating in territories we've claimed. Approaching my business partners, spreading rumors. He's looking for leverage, for a way to shift the power balance in Chicago. And I'm leverage. You're a woman under my protection. In Vincent's world, that's the same thing. Dominic's expression darkened. But he doesn't understand something crucial. I don't negotiate when it comes to protecting what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, Grace felt something else entirely, a dangerous warmth, a sense of being claimed that she'd never experienced with Ryan. This wasn't control. This was something fiercer, more primal. Protection that came from care, not ownership. What do? She asked. We stay vigilant. We follow protocols. And we trust that Vincent isn't stupid enough to cross the line. Dominic stepped closer. Close enough that Grace could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. Can you do that? Can you trust me? Grace looked up at him, this man who'd saved her from a bridge, who'd given her a life back, who watched his daughter with such fierce love it made her heart ache. Yes, I trust you. Something shifted in his expression, relief, gratitude, and something darker. Something that made Grace's pulse quicken. Good, he said softly. Because I need you to know something, Grace. You're not just Sofia's tutor. You're not just someone I'm helping out of obligation to my late wife's memory. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You've become important to me, and I protect what's important. His hand lingered on her cheek, warm and solid. Grace's breath caught. She should step back, should maintain professional boundaries, should remember that this man was dangerous, that his world was violence and power, and things she didn't understand. But all she could think about was how safe she felt in this moment, how seen, how valued. Dominic, she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I know, it's complicated. You work for me. You're vulnerable. The power dynamic is all wrong. His voice dropped lower. But I need you to know that what I feel, it's real. It's not about control or possession. It's about... A sharp knock on the study door interrupted them. They stepped apart quickly as Marcus entered, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Dominic's entire demeanor shifted from tender to lethal in an instant. "What kind of problem?" Vincent's men were spotted outside the property. 3 vehicles. 8 men total. "They're not hiding. They want us to know they're watching." Grace felt ice flood her veins. "Is Sofia?" "Sofia's fine," Marcus assured her. "Maria's with her. The house is secure. But this is a message." Dominic's jaw clenched. "Vincent wants a meeting." "Fine. He'll get one." "Marcus, call Anthony and Luca. I want a full team at the warehouse tomorrow night. And double security here, no one gets through those gates." "Already done, boss." "Good." Dominic looked at Grace, and she saw the war in his expression, the desire to stay with her versus the need to handle this threat. "Grace, I need you to go to the guest house and stay there. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except Maria or me. Understand?" "Yes." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I'll have 2 guards outside. You won't see them, but they're there." He moved toward her, hesitated, then pulled her into a brief, fierce embrace. "I won't let anything happen to you or Sofia. I swear it." Then he was gone, striding out with Marcus, already barking orders into his phone. Grace stood alone in the study, her heart racing, the warmth of his embrace still lingering on her skin. She'd known his world was dangerous, had understood it intellectually, but now she was feeling it viscerally, the constant threat, the chess game of violence and power, and she was a piece on that board, whether she wanted to be or not. Grace walked to the guest house on shaking legs, acutely aware of the shadows that moved at the property's edges. Guards, Dominic's men, protection that felt simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. Inside, she locked the door and sank onto the couch, Biscuit, who'd followed her over, pressing against her legs. She thought about Ryan, about the months of fear and running, thought about Dominic's promise to keep her safe, thought about the way he'd touched her face, the tenderness in his eyes. 3 weeks ago, she'd been sleeping under a bridge. Now she was in a guest house, on a Mafia boss's estate, caught up in a power struggle she barely understood, falling for a man who lived in violence and danger. Her phone, a new one Dominic had provided, buzzed with a text. "Dominic, you okay?" Grace stared at the message, then typed back. "Grace, yes, scared, but okay." "Dominic, fear is smart, but I've got you. Get some rest. I'll check on you later." Grace set the phone down and looked around the guest house at the comfortable furniture, the stocked kitchen, the safety she'd been given. Then she looked at the locks on the door, at the shadows of guards outside her window, at the reality of her new life. She'd traded one kind of danger for another, but at least this time, she wasn't facing it alone. At least this time, someone was standing between her and the monsters, even if that someone was a monster himself. The next 24 hours passed in a strange limbo. Grace maintained Sofia's lessons, keeping everything normal for the little girl who sensed tension but didn't fully understand it. Dominic was absent most of the day meetings, Marcus had said vaguely but called twice to check on them. That evening, Grace was reading Sofia a bedtime story when Dominic appeared in the doorway. He looked exhausted, his 5 o'clock shadow darker, his eyes carrying weight. "Daddy!" Sofia sat up in bed. "Did you fix the problem?" "I'm working on it, princess." He came over and kissed her forehead. "But right now, you need to sleep. Big day tomorrow, Grandma Rosa's coming for lunch, remember?" "I remember. I'm going to show her my new reading level." Sofia looked at Grace. "Miss Grace says I'm progressing exceptionally. That's a big word." "It is," Dominic agreed, smiling. "Now sleep. Miss Grace and I need to talk grown-up things." Sofia made a face but dutifully snuggled under her covers. Grace kissed her forehead, something that had become ritual over the past 3 weeks, and followed Dominic out of the room. They walked to his study in silence. Once inside, Dominic poured himself a whiskey and drank half of it before speaking. "Vincent and I had a conversation this afternoon, at the warehouse, very civilized, very clear." He finished the whiskey. "He wanted me to know that he's aware you're here, that he's watching, that he considers you an interesting development." Grace's mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" "It means he's thinking about using you, testing whether I care enough to make concessions to keep you safe." Dominic set down his glass with controlled precision. "I disabused him of that notion, made it very clear that you're untouchable, and the consequences of proving otherwise would be terminal. You threatened him. I made him a promise." Dominic's eyes were hard. "There's a difference. A threat is conditional. A promise is absolute." Grace sank into a chair. This is because of me. I brought this danger to your home, to Sofia. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. No. Dominic knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Vincent has been looking for an opening for months. You're an excuse, not a cause. And even if you were, his grip tightened. Even if you were, I'd make the same choice. I'd keep you here. I'd protect you. Because that's who I am, Grace. She looked down at their joined hands, his scarred and strong, hers still showing traces of the roughness from months on the street. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this world. You survived 3 months homeless in Chicago winter. You escaped an abusive marriage. You protected your dignity and your compassion through circumstances that would have broken most people. Dominic's voice was fierce. You're stronger than you know, and you're not alone anymore. Grace met his eyes, seeing the absolute conviction there. What happens now? Now? Vincent backs off because he knows I'm serious. Ryan stays away, because Vincent pulls his leash. And you, Dominic stood, pulling her up with him. You keep teaching my daughter. Keep living in the guest house. Keep being the person who's brought light back into this family. He stepped closer, and Grace could feel the heat radiating from him. And maybe, when this is settled, when it's safe, we figure out what this is between us. Because it's something, Grace. You feel it too. She did. God help her, she did. I'm scared, she admitted. Of your world. Of getting hurt again. Of not being enough. You're more than enough. His hand came up to cup her face. And I'm scared too. Scared of losing someone I care about. Scared of failing to protect you. Scared of how much you've come to mean to me in just 3 weeks. Grace leaned into his touch, making a choice. Maybe it was the wrong one. Maybe she'd regret it. But right now, in this moment, with this man who'd saved her and protected her and seen her as more than her circumstances right now, she needed to be brave. Kiss me, she whispered. Dominic's eyes darkened. Grace, please, I need to know this is real. That you're real. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. That he'd be noble and professional and maintain proper boundaries. But then, his control cracked, and he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, questioning, but when Grace responded, wrapping her arms around his neck, it deepened. Became something hungry and desperate, 3 weeks of tension releasing all at once. Dominic kissed like he did everything else with complete focus and intensity, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. His hands tangled in her hair, and Grace pressed closer, needing the solid reality of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. This changes things, he said quietly. I know. Vincent will see it as weakness, something to exploit. Then we don't give him the chance. Grace pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You said I'm stronger than I know. Prove it. Don't protect me by pushing me away. Protect me by trusting me to handle this. Dominic studied her face, and slowly, he smiled a real smile, rare and beautiful. You're extraordinary, you know that. I'm terrified, she corrected. But I'm done running, done hiding. If I'm in this world now, then I'm actually in it. With you. He kissed her again, softer this time, like sealing a promise. With me, he agreed. But Grace, if anything goes wrong, if Vincent makes a move, you follow my orders without question. Can you do that? Yes. Promise me. I promise. It was a vow she'd regret making, because 3 days later, everything would fall apart in the worst possible way, and Grace would learn exactly what Dominic Marchetti was capable of when someone he loved was threatened. But for now, in this moment, she let herself be held by a dangerous man who somehow made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. And that, more than anything, should have been her first warning. 3 days later, Tuesday afternoon, Grace was in the middle of a geography lesson with Sofia, pointing out continents on the globe, when Maria appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, her hands twisting in her apron. Miss Holloway, Mr. Marchetti needs you in his study. Immediately, something in Maria's tone made Grace's stomach drop. Is everything okay? Please, just go. Grace left Sofia with Maria and hurried to the study. Dominic stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, his entire body radiating fury. Marcus stood nearby, his expression grim. I don't care what excuse you have, Dominic said into the phone, his voice deadly calm. You find him. You bring him to me. And you do it in the next 2 hours, or I start making examples. He ended the call and turned to Grace. The look on his face made her blood run cold. "What happened?" she asked. "Ryan." Dominic's jaw was so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "He's in Chicago. Vincent gave him your location." The room tilted. "What?" "Vincent wants a meeting. He used Ryan as his messenger." Dominic pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was taken from outside the estate gates, a shot of Grace walking with Sofia in the garden yesterday, both of them laughing. The caption read, "Beautiful family you've got there, Marchetti. Would be a shame if something happened to them." Grace's legs gave out. She sank into a chair, her mind spinning. Sofia's safe. I've tripled security. No one's getting near this house." Dominic knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "But Grace, I need you to listen carefully. Vincent's playing a game. He wants me angry, wants me to make mistakes. And Ryan's his opening move. Where is Ryan now? We're tracking him. He's staying at a motel on the south side. Vincent's keeping him close, protected." Dominic's eyes were hard. "But protection only goes so far. Ryan made a critical mistake. He threatened my family. There's no coming back from that." Grace understood what he was saying, what he was offering to do. "Dominic, he's a dead man, Grace. The moment Vincent gave him that photo, Ryan's fate was sealed." His voice was absolutely certain. "The only question is timing." "No." Grace gripped his hands harder. "If you kill him, Vincent wins. He's trying to provoke you into open war. You said it yourself, he wants you to make mistakes. Some mistakes are worth making. Please." Grace's voice broke. "I know what Ryan is. I know what he's done. But if you kill him for me, I become the reason for violence. I become—" She couldn't finish. Dominic stood abruptly, pacing. "What do you want me to do? Wait until he finds a way past my security? Until he hurts you or Sofia? I won't risk that." "Then we need to be smarter than Vincent expects." Grace stood, her mind racing through options. "What does Vincent really want?" Marcus spoke up. "Territory, legitimacy. He's been expanding at his operations. But he needs the kind of connections and respect that Mr. Marchetti has. This is about power, not personal vendetta." "Then give him something that looks like power but isn't," Grace said. "Make him think he's won something." Dominic stopped pacing. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know your world well enough to plan it, but I know manipulation. I lived with it for 3 years. Grace moved closer to him. "Vincent thinks I'm your weakness. What if we use that? What if we make him believe he has leverage, let him get confident, and then—" She looked at Marcus. "Is there a way to turn this back on him?" Marcus and Dominic exchanged a look. Something passed between them, understanding. Calculation. "There might be," Dominic said slowly, "if we're willing to take the risk." "What risk?" "Using you as bait." Grace's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "Explain." Over the next hour, they outlined a plan. It was dangerous, relied on perfect timing, and required Grace to trust Dominic completely. But it was also the only way to neutralize Vincent's threat without starting a war that could destroy everything. "I don't like it," Dominic said after they'd gone through the details 3 times. "Too many variables, too many ways it goes wrong." "But if it works?" Grace pressed. "If it works, Vincent loses face, Ryan gets what's coming to him, and you stay safe." Dominic pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. "But if it doesn't work, you could get hurt." "I can't." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't lose anyone else, Grace. Not you." Grace pulled back enough to look up at him. "You won't lose me. I trust you. I trust Marcus. And I'm tired of being the helpless victim in my own story." She touched his face gently. "Let me do this. Let me be brave." Dominic closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they held resignation and pride. "Okay, we do it your way. But Grace," his expression became fierce, "you follow. Orders exactly. You wear the wire. You don't improvise. The second something feels wrong, you say the safe word and we come in. Understood?" "Understood." "Say it back to me." "I follow orders exactly. I wear the wire. If something feels wrong, I say the safe word and you come in." "Good." He kissed her forehead, then her lips soft and quick and loaded with promises. "We set it up for tomorrow night. That gives us time to prepare, to get everyone in position." "What do I tell Sofia?" "Nothing. She doesn't need to know her Miss Grace is about to do something incredibly dangerous and brave." Dominic managed a small smile. "We'll tell her you're going to a teacher conference. Maria will stay with her." The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus fitted Grace with a nearly invisible wire, taught her how to activate it, made her practice the safe word, lighthouse, until she could say it without thinking. Dominic went over the plan again and again, identifying every possible complication, every exit strategy. "Remember," he said that evening as Grace prepared to leave, "Vincent wants information. He wants to know how I feel about you, what I'd give up to keep you safe. You play scared but not too scared, vulnerable but not weak. Can you do that? I was married to Ryan for 3 years. I know how to perform vulnerability." Grace adjusted the simple black dress she wore, elegant but not too formal. The kind of thing a woman might wear to meet her protector's rival in hopes of negotiating peace. Dominic pulled her into his arms. "I'll be listening to every word. I'll have men positioned within 30 seconds of your location. And Grace," his voice dropped, "if Ryan touches you, if Vincent so much as looks at you wrong, the plan is off. I'm coming in, consequences be damned." "Trust the plan," Grace reminded him. "Trust me. I do trust you. It's everyone else I don't trust." The meeting was set for 8 p.m. at a restaurant. Vincent owned neutral ground, he'd called it, though everyone knew he controlled every inch of the place. Marcus drove Grace there, silent and focused. 2 other cars followed at a distance, packed with Dominic's men. "You remember the signals?" Marcus asked as they pulled up. "Lighthouse if I need immediate extraction. Red wine if Vincent's being truthful. White wine if he's lying." Grace took a deep breath. "And if Ryan shows up, keep him talking. The longer he talks, the more rope he gives us to hang him with." Marcus squeezed her shoulder. "You're doing great, Miss Holloway." "Mr. Marchetti chose well." Grace stepped out of the car and walked into the restaurant on shaking legs. The maitre d' led her to a private room in the back. Vincent Calabrese sat at the head of the table, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. "Miss Holloway." He stood, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult." Grace sat, keeping her posture straight, but her hands clasped, a woman trying to be brave. "You said you wanted to talk. About Ryan. About ending this situation. Straight to business. I like that." Vincent poured her a glass of red wine, the signal for truthfulness, though Grace suspected it was for show. "Let me be frank, Miss Holloway. Dominic Marchetti is a reasonable man, but he's also proud, stubborn, and lately, he's been making decisions that concern me." "Decisions like protecting me?" "Exactly." Vincent leaned back. "You see, Dominic and I have had an understanding for years. We stay out of each other's way. We respect boundaries. But when he starts bringing civilians into our world, attractive young women who happen to be running from violent ex-husbands, well, that changes things." Grace's fingers tightened on her wine glass. "I didn't ask for his protection. But you accepted it. You moved into his home. You've been teaching his daughter." Vincent's smile widened. "You've been sharing his bed, I hear." Heat flooded Grace's face. "That's none of your business." "It becomes my business when it affects Dominic's judgment. Tell me, Miss Holloway, how much is he willing to give up for you? Territory? Profit? Power?" He leaned forward. "Because that's what I need to know. That's why you're here." In her ear, barely audible, came Dominic's voice through the wire. "Stay calm. Keep him talking." "I don't know what Dominic would give up," Grace said carefully. "We haven't discussed it." "Haven't discussed it? But surely you've thought about it. A woman in your position, homeless, desperate, suddenly living in luxury with a powerful man. You must have considered what it costs him, what it might cost you." The door opened. Grace's heart stopped. Ryan walked in. He looked different, harder, meaner. 3 months had added weight to his frame, and there was a confidence in his stride that hadn't been there before. The confidence of a man backed by power. "Hello, Grace," he said, his voice sending ice through her veins. Grace forced herself not to react, not to show the terror clawing at her throat. "Ryan, you're looking good. Better than when you were living under that bridge." He pulled out a chair and sat, his eyes raking over her. "New dress, new life. Sleeping with a gangster suits you." "Mr. Calabrese," Grace said, ignoring Ryan and keeping her voice steady. "You said this meeting was about negotiation. Having my ex-husband here seems like intimidation." "It's context," Vincent corrected. "Ryan has a legitimate grievance. You destroyed his life, got him fired, ruined his reputation, and then you ran straight into the arms of Chicago's most dangerous man. That's quite the upgrade." Ryan leaned forward. "I just want what's mine, Grace. What you took from me. I took nothing from you except myself," Grace said. and felt Dominic's pride through the wire connection. You took everything from me, my safety, my job, my home, because you couldn't follow simple rules. Rules, Grace's voice sharpened. You mean the rule where I wasn't allowed to talk to male coworkers? Or the rule where I had to account for every dollar I spent? Or maybe the rule where I deserved to be hit if I disagreed with you? Ryan's face darkened. You always exaggerate. There's a police report, medical records, photos. Grace stood, done playing the frightened victim. And now there's a restraining order you violated 9 times. You don't want what's yours, Ryan. You want to hurt me. There's a difference. Vincent watched this exchange with calculated interest. Passionate. I see why Dominic likes you. But Miss Holloway, passion doesn't solve practical problems. Ryan works for me now. He's under my protection, just like you're under Dominic's. So we have a stalemate. Unless, Ryan added, his smile cruel, Grace comes back to me, leaves Marchetti's house. Then there's no conflict. Everything goes back to normal. Grace laughed bitter and sharp. Normal? You mean terrified, controlled, hurt. That's not normal, Ryan. That's abuse. It's marriage. It's prison. Grace leaned forward, channeling 3 years of suppressed rage. And I'd rather die than go back to it. So if that's your negotiation, you can tell Vincent and Dominic to do whatever they need to do. I won't be a bargaining chip. In her ear. Perfect. Marcus is moving into position. Vincent's expression shifted, less amused, more calculating. Strong words. But are you willing to accept the consequences? If this escalates, people get hurt. Dominic's people. Maybe Dominic himself. Maybe even that little girl you're so fond of teaching. Grace's blood went cold. Sofia's a child. Children are leverage. Vincent shrugged. That's reality in our world. You want to be brave, Miss Holloway? Then accept what bravery costs. Ryan stood, moving around the table toward Grace. She stayed seated, forcing herself not to flinch as he approached. Come on, Grace, he said, his voice dropping to the intimate, coaxing tone he'd used during their marriage. Let's stop this nonsense. You know you need me. Look what happened when you left. You ended up homeless, helpless. You need someone to take care of you. I need someone to respect me, Grace corrected. Something you never did. Ryan's hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. You ungrateful. The door exploded inward. Dominic moved like violence incarnate, crossing the room in 3 strides, grabbing Ryan by the throat and slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. You touched her, Dominic said, his voice deadly calm. That was a mistake. Marcus and 4 other men flooded in, guns drawn, surrounding Vincent before he could react. The restaurant's back room suddenly filled with Dominic's people. They'd been positioned all along, waiting for the signal. Vincent raised his hand slowly. Dominic, let's be rational. Rational? Dominic's grip tightened on Ryan's throat. You threatened my daughter. You used this piece of trash, he shook Ryan like a rag doll, to intimidate a woman under my protection. And you thought I'd negotiate? The wire? Vincent said, realization dawning. She was wearing a wire. Every word recorded, Marcus confirmed, including the threat against Sofia Marchetti. That's a line you don't cross, Vincent. Not in Chicago, not anywhere. Dominic released Ryan, letting him drop to the floor, gasping. Then he turned to Vincent, and Grace saw the true extent of his power, the cold calculation, the absolute certainty of a man who knew he'd already won. Here's what's going to happen, Dominic said. Ryan Holloway violated a restraining order 9 times, threatened a woman, conspired to intimidate and harm. He's going to prison, real prison, where he'll face real consequences. You're not protecting him. You're handing him over. And if I refuse, then the recording of you threatening a 6-year-old girl goes to every family. In Chicago. Every contact you have. Every business partner. Dominic smiled, and it was terrifying. You'll be finished. Not because I'll destroy you, though I will, but because threatening children makes you untouchable. No one will work with you. No one will protect you. You'll be alone. Vincent's face had gone pale. He looked at Grace, at the wire barely visible at her collar, at the way Dominic positioned himself between them. This was a setup. This was a trap, Dominic corrected. One you walked into because you underestimated 3 things: my intelligence, my resources, and most critically, he glanced at Grace with something like wonder. Her courage. Grace stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. You thought I was weak, Vincent. You thought I'd be easy leverage. But I survived 3 months on Chicago streets in winter. I survived Ryan's abuse for 3 years before that. I survived things that would have broken stronger people. She moved to stand beside Dominic. I'm not weak. I'm a survivor, and survivors don't negotiate with terrorists. Ryan tried to stand, and Marcus put a foot on his back, keeping him down. Stay down, trash. Grace, please, Ryan wheezed. I'm sorry. I was just Vincent made me. I never meant. You meant every word, Grace said, looking down at him without pity. You meant it when you hit me, when you controlled me, when you destroyed my career and my life. The only thing you didn't mean was the consequences catching up with you. She crouched down, meeting his eyes. But they did, and now you face them. Dominic nodded to Marcus. Call Detective Morrison. Tell him we have a restraining order violator ready for pickup. Multiple counts. And Marcus, his voice hardened. Make sure Ryan understands what happens if he ever comes near Miss Holloway again. Use small words so he can't misunderstand. Marcus smiled grimly. It'll be my pleasure, boss. 2 of Dominic's men hauled Ryan to his feet and dragged him out. He was crying now, begging, promising to leave town, to never come back. Grace watched him go and felt nothing but relief. Dominic turned back to Vincent. As for you, our understanding is over. You stay south of Madison Street. You don't expand. You don't test boundaries. And you never ever threaten my family again. Clear? Crystal? Vincent said through clenched teeth. Good. Now get out of my sight before I forget that I'm trying to be civilized. Vincent left quickly, his pride shattered, his power play turned against him. When the room finally cleared, leaving just Grace, Dominic, and Marcus, the adrenaline crashed. Grace's legs gave out, and Dominic caught her, pulling her against his chest. You were incredible, he murmured into her hair. So brave, so smart. I've never been more terrified or more proud. Is it over? Grace asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. Is it really over? It's over. Ryan's going to prison. Vincent's neutralized. You're safe. Dominic pulled back enough to look at her face. You're safe, Grace. Finally, you're safe. Grace started crying, great. Heaving sobs of relief and exhaustion and 3 years of held-back terror. Dominic held her through it, steady and solid, while Marcus tactfully left to coordinate cleanup. I want to go home, Grace finally said. I want to see Sofia. I want. She looked up at Dominic. I want to feel normal again. Then let's go home. He kissed her forehead. Then her lips, gentle and reverent. Let's go home to our daughter. Our daughter. The words settled into Grace's chest like a key finding its lock. 6 months later, June Grace stood in the garden, watching Sofia practice her reading aloud to Biscuit. The dog lay patiently while the 8-year-old girl, confident, happy, thriving, worked through a chapter of Charlotte's Web. Arms wrapped around Grace from behind, she leaned back into Dominic's embrace, content. She's reading at a 6th grade level now, Grace said. Her teacher wants to test her for the gifted program. Of course she does. She has the best tutor in Chicago. Dominic kissed Grace's neck. Speaking of which, I have something for you. He handed her an envelope. Grace opened it and gasped. This is a job offer. Principal Morrison at Riverside Elementary is retiring. The board wants someone with your background and credentials to take over. Full salary, benefits, and they've even agreed to fund a special reading program you'd design. Dominic smiled. I may have made a few calls, used a little influence. Dominic, I know. You want to earn things on your own merit. And you did. They looked at your record, your qualifications. I just made sure they looked. He turned her to face him. But if you don't want it, if you'd rather stay here with Sofia full-time, that's fine too. Whatever makes you happy. Grace looked at the offer letter, then at Sofia, then at the man who'd saved her life in every way that mattered. Can I do both? Principal during school hours, Sofia's tutor in the evenings? You can do anything you want. You're Grace Marchetti now. The world is yours. Grace froze. What did you just say? Dominic's smile widened. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and dropped to one knee right there in the garden. Grace Elizabeth Holloway, you are the strongest, bravest, most compassionate woman I've ever known. You brought light back into my life, love back into my heart, and joy back into my daughter's world. You saved us just as much as we saved you. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. Will you marry me? Will you officially become Sofia's mother and my wife? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again? Grace couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded frantically. "Is that a yes?" Dominic asked, grinning. "Yes, of course yes." Daddy asked her. Sofia shrieked from across the lawn. "Miss Grace said yes. Maria, come quick. We're getting married." Dominic stood, slipping the ring onto Grace's finger, and kissed her properly. When they broke apart, Sofia crashed into them both, and they stood there, the three of them holding each other in the summer sunshine. Maria appeared with champagne and juice for Sofia, and they toasted to new beginnings, to family, to love that bloomed in the unlikeliest places. That night, after Sofia was asleep and Maria had retired, Grace and Dominic sat on the terrace overlooking the garden. She wore her engagement ring and his shirt, curled against his side. "Do you ever think about that morning?" Grace asked. "At the bridge?" "Every day," Dominic said. "I think about how close I came to driving past. How if Sofia hadn't noticed you, if she hadn't insisted I stop." He tightened his arm around her. "You changed my life, Grace. Showed me I could love again. Could build a family again. You saved my life. Gave me back myself. We saved each other," Dominic corrected. "That's what love does. It rescues and is rescued. Protects and is protected. Strengthens and is strengthened." Grace looked up at the stars, at the vast Chicago sky that had once seemed so hostile and now felt full of possibility. She thought about the woman she'd been sleeping under bridges, carrying her teaching certificate like a prayer, certain she'd never feel safe again. And she thought about who she was now, engaged to a powerful man who treated her like a treasure, mother to a brilliant girl who'd asked one simple question, principal-elect of an elementary school, owner of a life she'd fought tooth and nail to reclaim. "Thank you," Grace whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. For believing in me. For letting your daughter's compassion guide you instead of cynicism." Dominic kissed her temple. "Thank you for being brave enough to accept help. For trusting me. For loving us both even when my world was dark and dangerous." "Your world is still dark and dangerous," Grace pointed out. "True, but now it has you in it. And that makes all the difference." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the moon rise over the estate. Somewhere in the house, Biscuit snored. Sofia slept peacefully, dreaming of whatever 8-year-olds dreamed. And Grace Holloway, soon to be Grace Marchetti, finally felt like she was home. Not in a place, not in a building, but in a life she'd built from ruins, with a man who'd shown her that protection could come from strength instead of control, and with a little girl whose simple question had changed everything. "Daddy, why is that lady sleeping in the cold?" Because sometimes salvation arrives in the form of a child's compassion and a father's willingness to act on it. Sometimes it comes wrapped in danger and luxury and unexpected love. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it comes with a second chance to be everything you were always meant to be. Grace had that now. All of it. And she'd never let it go. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.